Let's turn to the domestic political front. Some pretty interesting reporting about how Democrats are feeling about the leadership of Nancy Pelosi. Let's go ahead and put this first part up on the screen. CNN was the outlet that was doing the reporting here. And go ahead and put this tweet up. So this is from one of their reporters, Edward Isaac Dovier. He says, has some of the quotes here from Democratic members of the House who basically are saying, look, if we win the House, I guess we'll give Pelosi the speakership again. But if they lose the majority, quote, the dynamics change. I think it changes the game. If you dig into this article, they interviewed more than 24 House Democrats. That seemed to be the consensus that among most of them, that, quote, if they lose the majority, there would be overwhelming pressure for Pelosi to go, a prospect that Democratic sources say the House Speaker is keenly aware of. If they do hold control, it could lead to Pelosi extending her time in power. But Democrats are split about that possibility. A sizable contingent is eager for new leadership regardless of the outcome, even if she would be the heavy favorite to hold on to the gavel. Now, the thing that is always interesting to me about this is that the corporatists and the centrists are willing to go so much harder than the lefties.
Yeah.
So AOC is quoted in here, and it's very squishy.
Yeah, what does she say?
She says, I think if we're in a minority, then I think that the desire for change will be broader, potentially within the party, but I think that desire exists. We saw and heard that desire in the last 2 terms that Democrats were the majority, so it really is just a question of not if people want that, but how many. Whereas you've got, you've got another senior corporatist Democrat here who says she has to go, no way she can stay, she doesn't have the votes. So always interesting to me that and part of that is that the people who challenge her from the right, they get forgiven for it, I mean, there was a sort of uprising in 2016, was it?
Yep.
Where it was okay, we might make a run from the right at pushing Pelosi out of power. Those people were all welcomed back in with open arms. Whereas if it was a lefty challenge, then forget it. They would be, excised from the party and demonized as Russian traitors or whatever forever. I also thought that there was an interesting quote here from Henry Cuellar, who, Pelosi really went to bat for, dragged him across the finish line in his primary where he was facing a challenger to his left. And you see very clearly in this article why she was so committed to keeping him. Cuellar says, I support Pelosi. I'll support her for whatever position. That's ultimately the bottom line in spite of the fact that he's anti-choice and pro-gun and totally at odds with her on any number of other issues, that she still backed him and dragged him across the finish line because ultimately he was going to be there for her in the vote that is most important to her. So if she does go, who would be the replacements? This is also very interesting. The 2 that are always floated, Hakeem Jeffries in particular, I think is the person who's floated the most, Democrat out of the New York area. What does he represent? Brooklyn, I think. And then you have Adam Schiff, who, you guys know who Adam Schiff is. But in this article, they say that 2 of the current deputies, Steny Hoyer and Jim Clyburn, are also thinking about it, which if your case is Pelosi's too old, these dudes are just as old. So that's the piece. Go ahead and put that tweet back up on the screen. They say much attention on Pelosi's plans, but also Steny Hoyer has privately indicated to allies he would run for the top job if Pelosi bowed out. According to multiple Democratic sources, I don't think we're ruling out anything, Hoyer said, and Clyburn is also keeping options open. So there you go. That's the sort of state of play. Pretty interesting.
I mean, and Steny Hoyer is a whopping 83 years old, just so everyone, he's actually older than Nancy Pelosi. I believe Clyburn is also up. That's actually what strikes me more than I'm like, God, is there nobody 40, I mean, even 55, I'd take it. It's at this point, how is there not a bench of any real leadership? I really do think that they have done themselves a tremendous disservice. I was looking at a graph recently about average age in Congress, and the recent spike to the 70s and 80s, especially in leadership, that's a very recent phenomenon. It really only happened in the last 25 years. And much of it is because of Pelosi and the people around her complete inability to let go of power. I mean,
Clyburn is a very malevolent influence in politics, as is Adam Schiff. I mean, none of these people they're floating are an improvement over Pelosi. In fact, several of them are actually worse. Clyburn is probably the reason Kamala Harris is vice president, really. He's the one that, kneecaps the left in the primary. Ultimately, Biden's able to win. He is a big part of the reason that the Democratic Party stays so closely aligned to corporate power and never breaks that hard and fast alliance. So the idea of him stepping in as speaker is, it's not a good one. In my opinion, none of these, as I said, is any improvement. Adam Schiff, I mean, at least with Pelosi, you gotta say, like, she is relatively effective at keeping the caucus in line. She's kind of politically savvy and, like, strategic and tactically savvy. Like, these people, I don't think they have that level of tactical skill, and they're ideologically all terrible. So not an improvement, in my opinion, any of this. They discuss the possibility of Pelosi either stepping aside or being pushed out on CNN. Let's take a listen to a little bit of how that went.
But it is really an open question. You have this situation where we have 3 leaders of Democratic leadership who have been there for a very long time. And so there's a lot of interest in coming up the ranks.
Any women? Any women? No?
There are women who are in consideration for other posts, but the top job is probably going to not be a woman at this point. We'll see. It's too early to tell where this will go.
So CNN's top concern there is,
it's like, who is the woman? Where is the woman? It's like, God,
as if that's the thing that matters.
Yeah,
here.
Apparently that's the most important thing. Not what they believe. You know, this typical. Anyway, there's a reason that lady is losing her job, or at the very least, losing her primetime slot on CNN, or whatever morning show slot on CNN.
We're getting to that later in the show, the CNN shakeup. But I don't know. I mean, I don't really buy that Pelosi is going to step aside.
I don't either.
Especially if they do hold on to the majority, which I think is unlikely, but, you know, theoretically possible. I don't see any way she steps aside. And she supposedly, you know, back when she did face this, like, leadership threat before, she made a deal with them that it was like, I'm going to step aside in 4 years. Now, it was like an unofficial deal, and no one should have ever taken her word for it. But clearly, you know, she's sort of thrown those calculations aside. So I don't know. I do think she has that narcissistic tendency to feel like, oh, the future of the Republic depends on me staying in this position, and no one could possibly replace me. So I'm going to have to stay here no matter what. And I also, you know, I don't think any of these potential replacements, they're all close allies of Pelosi. So are they really gonna step up and, like, mount this direct challenge to her? I find it a little bit hard to believe, but it is interesting that you have, you know, a significant number of members right now saying that they think it's time to move on and that they think she'll be replaced.
I think you're right. I think she's too much of a narcissist to actually let go. She's intimated in the past, like, maybe I'll leave, maybe I won't. She always ends up staying. I honestly think she'll just die in office. Like, I don't think that she has it in her to step down. Well, at the very least, yeah, I mean, look at how much she just loves being feted. She's in, like, Armenia right now. You know, she loves to travel. She's always on board the military escort plane as, like, part of the, the actual line of succession for the U.S. government. I think she just really likes the flex of being speaker. And, you know, being minority leader in the House is not an insignificant position either. You also still have tremendous responsibility. So it wouldn't surprise me for a second if she stayed on.
Yeah, me neither. Cable news is ripping us apart, dividing the country, making it impossible to function as a society, and making it impossible to know just what is true and what is false. But the good news is they are failing and they know it.
That is why we're building something new, a new mainstream, a healthier one, something more trustworthy, something that we are going to need in one of the most pivotal times in American history. We are building up here for the midterms, for the upcoming presidential election, but we need your help. So if you can help us out by becoming a premium member today at breakingpoints.com, we're trying to change America for the better and the entire world.
So what are you waiting for, guys? Go to breakingpoints.com and sign up and help us build a new mainstream.